Let's bring in Deputy Republican Whip Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, and in Milwaukee, author, conservative commentator, and MSNBC contributor Charlie Sykes. Congressman, I'll start with you. What do you make of this public back and forth between the president and his attorney general?
I don't like it for a number of reasons. That's a pretty soft way to put it. First off, this would be the equivalent of me basically not getting along with my chief of staff and putting out on Twitter that my chief of staff is a terrible person and he's not doing a great job as chief. It's childish, number one. The other thing I worry about, too, is that everything that President Trump does, look, I'm a Republican, so I'm excited about a lot of his policy agenda, but some of this tone issue, what concerns me the most is that this is going to begin to set a precedent for what presidents in the future have to act like. So, you know, things like being outrageous on Twitter may be what the next person running for president says I need to do, and that's way below the office of president. And as I put out yesterday on Twitter, I think it's below even the office of city councilman.
Joe.
Yeah, let me bring in right now Charlie Sykes. Charlie, you and I have been concerned over the past 6 months, especially, that Republicans have not spoken out forcefully enough. Have you been heartened over the past week or two to see more and more Republicans like Trey Gowdy, Lindsey Graham, and many others speak out aggressively, and Adam Kinzinger there, speaking out aggressively against a president who does not seem to respect democratic norms or constitutional traditions?
Yeah, a little bit, but this is really banana republic stuff. You know, we're not just talking about a staffer, we're talking about the Attorney General, and the President's made it absolutely clear that his beef with Jeff Sessions is that he would not protect him by obstructing the investigation into Russia. So this really does cross all sorts of lines here. But I do think that Republicans need to be very, very clear that if he goes ahead and fires Robert Mueller, that is really a red line. They can stop this, but they have to stop this by being absolutely clear, because subtlety does not work with this president.
Mark Halperin.
Congressman, let's say the president tried to fire him and didn't ask anyone at the Justice Department to do it, which the regulations seem to suggest are required. If the president simply said, I fire Robert Mueller, what would happen next?
You know, I don't know what the law or the rules are. I know there would be, I think, really some huge questions here. I'd probably go very loud on that and say, you know, we need to get to the bottom. I've always said we need to find out what happened with this Russia investigation. So let's have our investigation in the House, Senate, and let's let the independent counsel do his job. If you fire the independent counsel, that'll appear very bad for getting the bottom of this Russia investigation. So I think you'll see, as was suggested by Charlie, who's in the great city of Milwaukee that I lived in for about a year, I think there would be a lot of people speaking up. I really do believe that.
Is it a potentially impeachable offense?
I don't ever go to that level. We'll see what happens when it happens. But that's a very, very high bar, and that has huge implications to say that I think a lot of people have been saying around very cavalierly right now.
Charlie, let me ask you about the Speaker of the House, a guy you know very well. And we don't, I do a 3-hour show every day. I don't know if you know that or not. And sometimes you say things that aren't precise, things that you don't exactly. So I don't want to hold Paul Ryan to this, because in a press conference yesterday, he sort of seemed to muddle Jeff Sessions and Bob Mueller. But it sounded as if he said in that press conference that Robert Mueller and Jeff Sessions work for Donald Trump, and he can hire and fire whomever he wants. That's not the case, is it? Especially with Robert Mueller.
No, it's not the case, and that was unfortunate. But Paul Ryan is walking a tightrope, and you could see that, you know, how quickly his spokesman, you know, tried to clarify that and say, no, he was talking about Sessions, he wasn't talking about the special prosecutor. But here's the problem with President Trump. He does not understand the fact that the FBI director, the special prosecutor, the attorney general do not work for him personally. They swear an oath to the Constitution. They work for the American public. He seems to think that somehow it's like his business back in New York. So, you know, Paul Ryan, you know, he can stop this. Mitch McConnell can stop this. They need to draw a stronger line. Now, maybe they're doing this in private, saying, don't go here because everything changes. Because really, at this point, you really have to ask yourself, what must Donald Trump be hiding? How big must it be for him to risk blowing up his administration in this way?
And that is the question a lot of people are asking.
Yeah.
Jeremy, is anybody from your reporting telling the president that firing Sessions would be a bad idea?
Absolutely. The inner circle in the West Wing is acutely aware of Sessions' popularity with the base, and they know that if Trump were to continue to abuse him and humiliate him in public and ultimately fire him, that could cause a rupture with the base.
Well, that doesn't appear to be working. He was doing it all day yesterday.
Well, that's the thing, because they can say this to President Trump all. Ultimately, you know what his response is? I'm president and you're not. And that's what they know.
Elise.
Congressman Elise Jordan here. You're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the House just passed a bill overwhelmingly. It was 419 votes for the bill to limit the power of the executive to roll back sanctions on Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And the White House has been lukewarm on this, and they haven't said if President Trump is going to sign this. What is your message to the White House about this bill?
Well, a couple points. The bill wasn't to limit the president's authority to roll back sanctions. The bill was new sanctions that had limits on the president's ability to roll back those sanctions. We did the same thing with Iran sanctions, whether it was President Obama or prior presidents. So it's not targeted at President Trump. This is a strong message from the Senate and the House that we believe Russia attempted to influence our elections. They're doing it with our European allies, and that we're going to stand very firmly against that. I think the White House will sign this bill, and if they don't, I'm going to raise holy hell, and frankly, we will override that veto. But I'll tell you, I think they're going to sign it. Indications we have are that they're on board with this.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, thank you very much. Charlie Sykes.